All right, hello everyone, Rob here, and in this video we're going to continue on with our free code camp tutorial where we're walking through the steps. We're going to be doing the next steps here, 21 through 40, and the one that we're doing is going to be building a registration form. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to go through this as you're going through it, but I also want to add in some commentary, some instructional points as well as we're going through. So sometimes we're going to add a few things that it's wanting, but then we're going to talk about maybe the elements that are on there. Now, each part of this video here is going to be chaptered out with the correct step that is associated with it. So if you are having any kind of issues, no reason to walk through the entire thing if you don't want to. But if you are wanting some hints and tips as we're going through this, I can tell you and teach you just a few things that we talk about in class. So if that's something that interests you, keep on watching, but we're going to go ahead and get started right now. All right, so we're in our very first step here, which is step 21. And in this step here, it tells us that at this point here, we should be able to hit the submit button. So if we click on this, we get this little pop-up that says, hey, this form would normally be submitted. Good job. But what it wants us to do now is add required attributes to our input fields, all in the very first field sets that we have. So we're going to have to go through each one of these input fields here and add the word required. Now, it doesn't matter where they go as far as functionality. Some might want to put it towards the end here. And notice right away when I click on the submit button, I get this little browser indication of please fill in this field. And so that's what it's doing. It's saying, hey buddy, you said that this was required and it's not detecting any values typed in there. So it's going to throw an error to let the user know that, hey, you need to fill out this part of the form. So really at the end of each one of these inputs here, I'm just going to put that keyword required on there. And that's all it's wanting for this one here. So make sure I scroll up so everybody can see that. But that is all. And if I hit the submit, notice that it's only going to throw an error on the first one. So say I type something in here, hit the submit, then it moves on to the next one. So it's not like you're going to get a lot of those annoying little pop-ups. It's just going to go one by one to help you let the user know they forgot to type something in. So anyways, let's go ahead and check the code here. We got the confetti. We're moving on to the next one. We are on step number 22 of building a registration form with FreeCodeCamp. And in here it says that there's certain types of attributes with built-in form validations. I mean, we've already seen that so far with the required. And now we also have one with the email. Now, just because the email has the type set to email, that means that it's going to be looking for that @ sign. It's going to be looking for the common domain of a dot and then something else at the end. That's what it's looking for. Now it says on here, let's add a custom validation to the input element by adding a minimum length and set that value to 8. We want to do this on the password. All right. And so what it's talking about is we're going to come down here to the password. And again, the order doesn't matter where you put it in. However, I'm just going to tag it on here at the end and I'm going to type out what it wants, which is min length. Okay. And then we want to set that equal to 8. Okay. Now, what if we hit the submit right now? Like I said, we're not going to see anything for the password until we fill these blocks in. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these things in with some information. Now, I will test out this email. I hit the submit and notice that it requires the @ sign in here. So I'm just going to do @ and then we can even further test this out is it's incomplete. It recognizes that's not a real email that will go anywhere. So I'll just do test.com. And then for the password right here, if I just type in 4 letters, I hit submit and it says, please put in the length of at least 8 characters. So that's where that error will actually pop up. So you can test it out, test this stuff out while you're going through these steps. Like I said, I'm going to help guide you through this if it happens to tell you something to do something, but we don't get to see it or it doesn't provide us with instructions to test this out, right? Because when you're developing, you do want to test things out. I'm going to go ahead and check the code here. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. So we are on step number 23 of the building registration form for FreeCodeCamp. And it's asking us to put in a pattern requirement. And here's the pattern requirement that it is wanting us to do here. So it says add a pattern attribute to the password. So we're going to come down here to our password, and eventually it does have us limit our length here. So it says remove the min length that we just got done putting on there. And then it wants the pattern attribute, and we want to set that equal to, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this right here. And so notice that we have a square bracket, and then we also have a curly bracket here. And what this is telling us is that we are allowed to put any lowercase letters in there through A through Z. And then as far as numerical values, we can only go with a 0 all the way up through a 5. A lot of times you'll have that as a 9, right? So you can utilize any of those. So this should create an error. And then over here is the length of it, which is going to be the 8th. So that's why they had us remove the minimum length, because we can include it in the pattern. So in order to see this, let's go ahead and fill this stuff out. And down here for the password, I'm just going to throw in all capital A's in here and hit the submit button. And it says, please match the requested format. So I know you can't see me actually typing that in here, but if I remove this here, you should be able to see me actually type in here to see this pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and do a name here, email, and then as far as the password goes, now if I do all lowercase, I hit submit, I'm still not matching that format. I don't get the error of, hey, it needs to be at least 8 characters long, but that's something that you might want to put on your website of, hey, are we matching based off of how many characters length it is? And then the next part, it shows up green with, hey, you matched lowercase, you matched one uppercase, you matched a special character. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few more, and then let's go ahead and add some numbers in there and go ahead and hit submit, and it works just fine. So that's our pattern. Let's go ahead, after I come in here and undo what I just did, check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next one. All right, we're on step number 24 here. This one seems pretty simple. It just says, let's go ahead and go on to the next part of the registration form. And this section is going to ask for the type of the account that the user is going to be opening. And let's go ahead and start off by adding 2 labels. And we're just going to put 2 labels in here. So that's not a big deal. Label. And then we want to make sure that we close them all, right? And then we'll go ahead and duplicate this. And let's go ahead and check our work. Here we go. Moving on to the next. Right, step number 25 of the building a registration form with FreeCodeCamp. We're looking at this here, and it says that users will be allowed to choose either personal or business. To do this, with each of the first 2 labels, add 1 input element and make the type be radio. So in here, we're just going to do the input. And remember, the input tag, it is a void element, okay? Notice that we do have a box right now of an input field, but I want to change this type. I want to set that equal to radio. And what that's going to do for us is going to put a little bullet point in there, allowing us to click on it later to assign it some data. And then it says over here, we want to do the same exact thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, and then I'm going to place it right there. And I believe that's what it is looking for. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. So we got 2 bullet points on our form now. All right, step number 26 of building a registration form with FreeCodeCamp. It says here that we want to put a space right after the input element that we just got done doing. And then we want to add the word personal to the top one. So we'll do personal. And then we want to add the next one here. We want that to be business. Okay. So there we go. Now we see on our form here, right above my picture, is we do have personal. We also have business. And again, right now, it does allow us to choose both. I'm sure we're going to fix this here shortly by grouping them together. But anyways, let's go ahead and check our code. Looks like it's good. Moving on to the next. Step number 27 was exactly what I was saying before, which is we're able to select both of these at the same time, and that's not a thing that you want one to be selected or the other. So we have to group them up here. And it says to relate the input fields, you want to give them the same name attribute with the value of account type. All right. So the name attribute. So let's go ahead and do a name attribute here. And we're going to do name equals, and then we want this to be account. type. Okay. And then we're going to do the exact same thing down here. And this is what now groups them and says, hey, only one of these can be selected. Okay. So let's go ahead and check our code. It looks like that's what they wanted. And we're moving on to the next one. Step number 28 of building a registration form with FreeCodeCamp. It says here that currently users can submit a form without even checking those radio buttons. Right now, that is true. It says before we were able to handle this with the keyword required as an attribute to the input field. However, with this one, we're going to put in a legend. So let's go ahead and add a legend here. And it wants it above the labels with the legend. And again, we're going to add the closing tags on here. And that's what I'm always teaching everybody, if you've been following along with the videos, is just automatically put your closing tag in there. I know in Visual Studio Code, if you're coding with that IDE, it does it for you automatically, but sometimes when you're utilizing this, you forget to close it. We can always go back to the center here and add what is needed. So it says that we want to add the account type required. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight it, and I'm going to paste that right here. So now I get on the, you can see right here on the form, just above this, it put that text in there alongside of the boundary, right? The little border that we have for the field set. Now, how do we add a default item on here? So the personal one needs to be checked. So we can just come in here, and on the input itself, all you have to do is put the keyword checked, and it will fill that in automatically, and the form still retains the ability to change. We're just providing a default value to make sure at least one of these is actually check marked. Okay, so we're just making it look like a form that we normally see in our daily lives, right? So let's go and check the code here. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next. We're in step number 29. It says here that we want to follow the accessibility best practices by linking the input fields along with the labels on the second field set that we're dealing with right now. And so in the labels, so remember, the label gets the keyword for, okay? And we want to put that in quotes here. And this one's going to be the personal account. And then we want to come over here to the input field, and we want to give it the ID of personal account. Okay. And then we want to do the same thing for this label here. We want this to be the business account. So we're going to do for with the equal sign. And then we want the business account and then the ID. We're going to set that equal to business account. All right. I believe that is what we want. Again, we're not going to see anything visually, anything with this. So we're going to go and check the code. It says, sorry, it does not pass. The label element should have the for attribute, and it looks like I misspelled one of them. So I forgot the equal sign here. Check our code now. There we go. That works. So we make mistakes. We'll fix them. On to the next one. All right. Step number 30 has a lot in it. Just by skimming it here real quick. It says here that we need to confirm that the user has read the terms and conditions. Add a label with the label on the inside of the newly created label. We want to add an element called input with the type being checkbox, and make sure that this part is required. Make sure we also utilize the ID and the for to set this up for good accessibility. A lot of stuff was talked about in this, but we're going to break it down element by element here. So it says we want a label. So let's do a label. And again, I'm closing it off here. And then I'm moving on to the input field. Okay. Now the input field, again, this is going to be a void element, self-closing. I don't want anything in here as far as right now we can see over on the far, we have a text box, right? We don't want that. We want the type of this to be of checkbox. So let's go ahead and change the type, and we want to make that equal to the checkbox. And then as far as the for here for the label, we'll do for, we want to set that equal to, and then it says terms and conditions. Okay. And that means that the input field, it needs to have an ID of terms and conditions. Okay. Now, I don't see anywhere on here where it tells me to put text on the label, and maybe that might be for another step, but let's go and check the code here. It says, sorry, we forgot to put the word required on here. So I failed to do one step here. Let's go ahead and add that keyword required. And there we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next one. All right. We are on step number 31 of the FreeCodeCamp build registration form. This part here, I was skimming over it. It does read as if it's hard, and we're trying to get what it really means. So this one is a little bit tricky. So if you ran into some issues, I don't like the instructions that much with this one, but let's go ahead and move on. So it says, add the text here. I accept the terms and conditions immediately after the input field. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to paste it, and hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about here. So I do get the I accept terms and conditions, and what it's asking us to do in this next part here is then link the text, terms and conditions to the following location. So this is where it wants us to basically get rid of this text here. And I'm going to go ahead and Command exit or cut it or Control X it. And that way I can go ahead and do an anchor tag here. And remember, I'm doing my opening and closing tags practice because things can get a little bit tricky. I'm next going to paste what is on my clipboard for the terms and conditions. And then I want to supply an href link. So href. And in the strings here, I want to go ahead and add in this that they give us. And now that highlighted my terms and service over here. Although it's hard to see with the blue, I'm sure we're going to go later on in the CSS and correct this. But for now, I believe that's what they want. And this one, it was definitely tricky. Hopefully this video helps you out on that one. Right. Moving on. Right, step number 32 of building a registration form with FreeCodeCamp. It's telling us, let's go ahead and we're moving on to the final field set, and we would like to allow the user to upload a profile picture. The input, we can have that element specify, hey, we want this to be a file. And then we want to add a label with the text of upload profile picture. And we want to make sure that we do include the colon in there. And then inside the label as well, we want to put the input field to be nested inside. So let's go ahead to do this. A lot of words here for this, but we're going to do label, and then we're going to go ahead and close that off. Again, always practicing opening and closing of the tags. Now we can go back to the label. Inside here, it says it wants the upload profile picture. So to make sure that I'm typing everything correctly for testing the code, I'm going to make sure that I do that. All right, it says nested inside of the label. Let's go ahead and add an input field. So we're going to do input field. The type, we're going to set that equal to file. And then remember, input fields are void elements. And I believe that is everything that we need to get this working. So notice that we do get the little choose file button over here, and it is nested inside of the label, so it's all on one line. So let's go ahead and check our work here. All right, congratulations. We're moving on to the next. So step number 33 in learning how to build a registration form with FreeCodeCamp, it says, let's go ahead and add another label. Okay, this one's going to be the input your age in years. The input field that we're going to use this time is going to be the type of number. So we're going to see what that input field looks like because it is going to look visually different. And then we want to put in attributes inside of the input field to have a minimum number that would be allowed to submit the form. And we want to set that to 13. And then the max, we want to set that attribute to 120. So if somebody tries to submit something outside of that range, an error will appear. So let's go ahead and do that. So over here, we're going to do label. So do label. And then we want to put in here, input your age, then years with the colon, and then a space. And then we want to close off that label. Okay. All right. Next, it says nest the input field inside the label. So let's do that. Input. We're going to make this type. We're going to set that equal to number. And then in here, this is where we're going to add these extra attributes. We're going to do the min, and then we want to also put in here, with the min being 13, we want the maximum that it could be. We want to set that equal to 120. All right, so let's take a look here. In this field here, like without it being actually activated here, but as soon as I click in there, notice that I do get these up and down arrows, right? And when I went for the up and down arrows, it automatically jumped to 13, right? And so if I tried to do 135, it would allow me to type it in, but manually utilizing the up and down or decrementer, it's not allowing me to do that. Okay. So let's go ahead and check our code, see if that's what it wants, and the congratulations, it passes. If you all did want to test this out, you would have to fill in the rest of the information here to see the errors that it would produce. Okay, so it said on there that because we put that in there, that if they try to submit the form, it will not submit the form. Actually, it makes them correct the problems. So moving on to the next. All right, we are on step number 34 of building a registration form for FreeCodeCamp. And it says on here that we need to add a drop-down menu to the form that you can do it very easily utilizing the select element. Now, the select element is a container that actually has the elements of option in between it. And every time you have an option element inside of your drop-down menu, that is what somebody can select, and it works as our labels for each one of the drop-down options that you'll see. So let's first start by adding a select element just below our label right here. This is what it's asking us to do. We're going to do a select element, and again, closing it off. And then inside here, it wants us to add in 5 different options. So it says nest 5 option elements. And so the option elements look like this. And then we're going to put a closing one on there. Okay. Now I'm sure in the next steps, they're going to have us fill these in, but I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to do this 5 times. Okay. We can kind of see the little drop down menu right here, and it's blank, but what goes in between these options here is going to work as our labels on what somebody chooses. So let's go ahead and check our code. Let's see if we get the congratulations. It looks like we do, and we're moving on to the next lesson. So step 35, wordy, but we have to understand a little bit what it's asking us to do. So it wants us to create a label, and basically we want to wrap the entire label around the select here. So I'm going to do a label. And we want to put the closing label tag. Remember, I always tell you, hey, let's go ahead and make sure we put the closing one there. It wants us to put it at the end of the select. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a label like. And then in between here, it wants us to add this text, which is, how did you hear about us? So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. I'm going to place it right here. And we can see that it's now all in line, and we haven't added any options quite yet. But like I said, I believe that's going to be in the next step. Following this, let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next one. Step number 36. So the drop-down menu options are currently empty, and we talked about that earlier in the previous couple steps. But it says we want to add the following text to each one of the options. And the very first one, we want this one right here, select one. So I'm going to come down here, our very first option, and I want to put that one on there. And so already we're starting to see it grow. The next part here, we want the FreeCodeCamp news and so on. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and fill this all out with the rest of them, and we'll be right back once they're done. All right, so we added them all in here, and something to note here is that this is as long as your long option. I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that part as well. It did grow in between the last pause here, but it looks like we have everything. Again, just copy, pasted, put them in there. And now I'm going to go ahead and check the code. We got the congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. Step number 37 says submitting the form with an option selected would not be useful to send to the server. As we have each option, we can give it a value that will actually be sent with the data package. So anyways, what it's having us do here, it says, given the first option, let's go ahead and make that value just an empty string. So we can do something like this, value, and we're going to set that equal to just an empty string. And then next, we want to set these values 1 through 4 respectively. We're just going to do value, and we're going to set that equal to 1, okay? And then we're going to do the same thing for the next one and the next one, but just increase the number. So there's number 2. And here comes value number 3. And then the last one with the value of 4. All right, let's check our code. I believe that's all it's wanting. And there we go. Congratulations. Moving on to the next step. Right, so step number 38 of the building a registration form for FreeCodeCamp. It tells us on here that the text area element acts just like an input element, but it comes with added benefits by allowing us to have multiple lines on it. That's interesting. And then you'll see that based on the browser specific, you're able to increase and decrease the size of it once we get to that phase here. And then you can even put in like how many lines do you want to start off with as far as rows go. Anyways, it says users will be able to register their bio here. So go ahead and add a label with the text of provide a bio. And then at the end of the field set, go ahead and add a text area element inside of the label element. And note that the text area requires a closing tag. So we're going to come down here. We're going to do our normal label. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and add our closing label right here. Okay. And it says it would like us to add this text here. I'm going to go ahead and copy it and put it in here. All right. So we see that appear up over here. And then inside of the label still, we want to do the text area. So that's text area. And it reminded us that we also need a closing tag on this. Okay. All right. And let's see if there's anything else that we needed to do on here. I don't believe so. Let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next. All right. So step number 39 has us doing a lot of busy work on here, but it is in the benefit for accessibility. So let's go ahead and see what it wants us to do. So inside the label elements, let's go ahead and attach these utilizing the keyword of for. And then they provide us with the identifier here. And then we want to go on each one of these input fields or select or the text areas and apply the following. On here, the very first one, again, we'll just go through a few here. So we'll do label for, and what's this one for? It's the profile picture. And then we come over here to the input field for the matching, and we're just going to do ID, and we're going to set that to the profile picture. Okay. And we're going to do the exact same thing on each one of these. And so let me go ahead and do that for us real quick. So I think that I got them all. I notice that we have, again, we're just following this pattern of label and then it goes with the for. All right. So each one of my labels has the keyword for or the attribute on there for, and then the ID goes on the actual element. Okay. Let's go ahead and check our code here. And the other thing I did want to point out on this is that the ID, it doesn't matter where it goes. It can go anywhere. It can go right here. It can go at the end. So the way, the order, it does not matter. Let's go and check our code. There we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next one here. All right, we are on step number 40. This is going to be the very last step of this video here, this video series. And then we're going to have another video to cover the remaining steps of this if you've been following along. But it says on line number 40, or step number 40 rather, that the text area appears to be too small. All right. We have attributes that are able to be placed upon the text area. So on these text areas here, we're able to apply rows and columns as attributes, rows and columns. So we want to initialize the rows to be 3. So we're going to come down here again. Order does not matter when it comes to this. We're going to do rows. We're going to set that equal to 30, set that equal to 3. We don't want 30. And then we want the columns. So the columns, they do get abbreviated to COLS, and we want to set that equal to 30. Okay, so that's what we wanted to do for it. So you can see that it gained a little bit of height, and then it also gained some width by us applying those simple attributes. So I'm going to go ahead and check the code, and there we go. Congratulations. We're ready to move on to the next one. All right. So hopefully you enjoy some of these videos that we're doing here to help you out and instruct and everything. Please leave a comment if anything helped you, as well as leave us okay. Let us know how we're doing with these. So we'll see you in the next video set. Okay.